Okay, so Monday, May 13th, 2024, the Ag Advisory Committee will be called to order, calling to order at 6:06 p.m. Member roll call. James O'Ku,
Here.
Natalie Sayre here, John Bars,
Here.
Peter Markey,
Here.
Brian Casey,
Here.
Cole Massaragos Anastasio,
Here.
Crystal Shea.
Here.
Daniel Theobald.
Here.
Take it for everything, right? Natural Resource Conservation Staff, Jim Howard. San Mateo County Ag Commissioner Corin Whittle.
Here.
Farm Bureau Executive Director Jess Brown.
Here.
UC Co-op Extension Representative Dr. Igor Lacan.
Here.
San Mateo County Planning Liaison Olivia Boo.
Here.
You move on to oral communications to allow the public to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. If your subject is not on the agenda, the chair will recognize you at this time. Anybody from the public with the item not on the agenda? Okay.
Just a moment.
Olivia,
Yeah.
anybody online?
One, Dante.
Hello?
There you go.
Hi, Dante Sylvester, the chair will recognize you at this time.
Okay, great. Yeah, just to follow up what I brought up, I believe last month on the reach codes, no propane, and then that was overturned or on hold. And my question was, until we get a safe, reliable, affordable grid, how long do we know anything, any updates on that? Meaning if you submit a project now with propane, are you grandfathered in, or does it have to be an approved project? Any updates on that?
I do. So just a heads up, I spoke to building staff, and so this is regulated by building, not by planning. So kind of clarify that part. And then as far as I know, you can, because there's this, we're in an interim where we don't know exactly what's happening. There has not been any determinations made. That's still in the works. So you can still move forward. There is grandfathering, and you can still apply for those permits or design projects incorporating that. And it will go through review, etc. And then the determination is what we're in middle of. I think if my memory is correct, it's hopefully going to be towards the end of this year, but that's not set in stone. That's an approximate time frame. Does that help?
End of this year that the code will be back in place?
That they will make a determination on how they're proceeding forward.
But right now you can submit with propane and that's allowable, a project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So go ahead and keep moving forward as if proposing to in compliance with the REACH code. And so also another aspect is our plan checkers, we have in-house plan checkers and we have external third party because of the project load. So the internal is up to speed on how things are being reviewed, that the REACH code is on still moving forward as if it's as it has been. Our third party reviewers, however, there was some kind of miscommunication. So if a project is given to one of our, I think we have 2 third party reviewers. If a project is given to the third party reviewer, they are not up to speed. They were never kind of brought up to speed on everything. So they may tell you that you cannot do that, but there is a workaround per building, and you would apply for a separate permit on those aspects, if that makes sense.
Olivia, yeah, one other piece I wanted to add to that. since, you can count the development that's happened out here in this coast side unincorporated area on one hand here. I mean, there's so minimal that's going on and just such a complicated, expensive process. Who do we need to ask at the county when a project comes before or is submitted on this unincorporated PAD, ag, COSI, whatever it might be, that it's kept in-house and doesn't get kicked out to a third party? There's just so little going on out here at the coast. I'd like to think that the courtesy of somebody in-house would take on a coastal project for us.
So, and again, you're talking about at the building permit stage, right? This is because the reach code applies at the building permit stage.
You know,
It
I guess my
applies-
question, excuse me to interrupt you, the third party, is that just building or building and planning?
It's building.
Building,
Yeah,
so
it's
I'm asking for building.
It's the plan checkers for the building permits. Yeah, it's it's with the building department. Does that
Thank you.
information help?
It does, thank you.
And then, but just to touch on what you just asked about in terms of if there's a way to, whether you call it streamlining or controlling, that the reviews happen in-house versus third party. That is not something I can ask on that. I can ask building staff on that, building management. I don't know their triage system on which path, if the project stays in-house or if it goes to, we have actually at least one third-party reviewer, we might have two third-party reviewers, definitely one. So I can ask on that as well, ask how that works. I don't know their system on how they triage that.
Okay, is that it for that, Dante?
Yes, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a public comment? The chair will recognize you at this time. Anybody online?
No, thank you.
Okay, so committee member updates and our questions to allow committee members to share news and our concerns for items not on the agenda. Peter, did you want to go first on that matter? Or just, and I'll just go after you. Okay, so I have one thing. I noticed that today, Olivia, you sent just for an FYI to the committee, I believe, a copy of a letter Farm Bureau wrote to the county for information. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure that the committee is aware regarding anything of information that I noticed there was information purported toward the bottom of the letter, to take that with a grain of salt. Any questions be sure to ask the county, just because the author of the letter has in fact reported erroneous info in the past. And so we want to be prudent on the matter. And thank you, Olivia, for sharing that with us. Peter?
The only thing that I want to say is that it was about 2010, 2012 that we inquired with, at the time, Don Horsley, to be able to hook up to the municipal water system in Pescadero. And after they researched it, they said because it went through LAFCO, it was deemed only for the township. And now here they're making a provision to put up a new structure of a fire station and have municipal water go out to them, where our property is adjacent to the water source of Pescadero. And when it's not new structure, and I just kind of see that if they're able to make provision for sort of a new structure to have water, a fire station, municipal water, people that have been wanting to have it should be able to have it as well. And I did reach out years ago, was denied. So that's just my point. What's good for one should be good for all.
Who denied it, LAFCO or
No.
county planning?
Don Horsley reached it, looked into it, and he came back and said could not, because at the time it was deemed to the township by LAFCO, and so therefore could not hook us up to it. And so I just felt we cannot do that. And then here, years later, this comes out that, the fire station is, trying to get permits to do what I wanted to do, and it looks like it's moving forward for them, but I'm denied. Can I have an existing structure that would accommodate people, or this is a new structure? And I just don't think I think if it's goes forward for them, it should be going forward for everybody else that's on the line that should be able, that's been wanting to have municipal water as well.
It sounds like it was probably LAFCO.
Yeah.
Which is not our purview or Corey's purview, so you probably need to contact LAFCO directly. I'll send you the contact information for the executive director tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was LAFCO, because like I said, Don Horsley looked into it, and he said it passed through LAFCO only for the township, and it was just dropped, and here they're making provisions, like I said, for the fire station, but they should make provisions for me too. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Right. I'm just saying it wasn't Horsley's decision, it was LAFCO's, and
That's what I said. He says he found out that it was deemed only to the township, therefore he couldn't do it because LAFCO passed it at the time deemed only to the township. But they're making adjustments that I feel now for the fire station. And if the exact goes through, they should make the same adjustments and accommodations for me as well.
Right. No,
That's what, okay.
yeah, but it's still LAFCO that decided, so I'll.
I'm not gonna repeat myself.
Yeah, no, I'll send you the information and contact LAFCO. They're the ones that made the decision.
Either Mike or I can send you the information.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
I had to say something about what you just said. I'd actually thought about it today regarding land itself. And I'd always said that land itself should be evaluated based on the land, not who owns it. And that is probably a good example right there, and something we should think about as a committee when we make decisions and things that come forth to our committee. Okay, so anything else, committee member updates or questions? Yeah, Cole, I don't have my cheater sheet here.
No worries.
Cole,
Yeah.
Mataragos, Anastasia.
Yes, yeah, thanks.
You.
The letter from the Farm Bureau, I don't believe that's on the agenda at the moment. I was hoping that we could briefly comment on that and one other topic, unless that's planned to be spoken about later.
Olivia, it's not on the agenda, but you tell us.
So what I would like to do, is it would be helpful, I can put it on the agenda for next month,
Mhm.
but what would be helpful is if you have questions on it,
Mhm.
so then I can, if I need to check into anything, that would be helpful to me.
Yeah, I don't have questions specifically. I appreciate the letter. I thought it summarized a lot of the concerns, that I think a lot of folks in this room had as well. I think yeah, Farm Bureau did a very good job of summarizing a lot of the issues. That I think we were discussing a little bit in our last meeting, and I independent of this letter, I kind of was, I'm talking a little bit about this in this meeting, because I think. A general theme, and I think things I've probably brought up over the course of my tenure here, I think is the main function of us being in this room is to advise the county on particular issues. Otherwise, I'm not sure, why we'd be here otherwise. And I think that, having input from us here in this room, and in addition from Farm Bureau, of making sure that the project that's selected is done so appropriately, and utilizing, us as a resource, Farm Bureau as a resource to do so is something that I just strongly feel the county should be listening to. On a general, or a continuation of that theme, one other item that I think has come increasingly to my attention, some from conversations earlier, just before this meeting, some from conversations I've had with other farmers in the last month, is just wanted to mention, the housing task force, has been approaching a number of different farms. And I think, I've heard stories from a couple farms where, such as like, there's been a member from or representative from the county who's just like walked into people's homes without knocking, no ringing the doorbell, no announcements, and no forewarning for coming. I think there's been other versions of that as well, where just visits that were surprise visits, even though it was clear that it had already been clear to the county that there is no farm worker housing on site. And you know, again, just from an advisory position, I would just say that we need to be careful about how the county's approaching, approaching this topic, because there seems to be some potential, Fourth Amendment implications of frankly, some of the approaches to this that could be, could have negative impacts on the county long term. So I would just say it's something that we need to approach a bit differently. In terms of both these topics, especially the topic regarding Farm Bureau, when we do have this on the agenda for next month. I would just say having a more formalized version of what how this sort of advising from this committee can be formatted. So it would be something that we could approach. So as opposed to just kind of talking about it in the next meeting, I think we need to have a more of a structured version of how are we creating essentially an agenda, not just for the meeting, but essentially a protocol that the county is supposed to be following when there is a major kind of agricultural issue like this, in a way that we're able to sort of take what we have in this room, give it to the county in a way where they're able to look at these issues and utilize the information here in this as well. But that's really the two main things, and they're kind of similar theme. But
I'll just follow up on what Paul was saying
The
about
chair
the,
recognizes Brian.
Sorry.
Casey. That's okay. Go ahead.
about the task force. They're definitely escalating in their pursuit to get on people's properties, and the task force are now passing along any properties that didn't voluntarily allow the inspections to happen to the county attorney's office. And now the county attorney's office are approaching owners, operators, and basically saying, respond with legal counsel if you don't want us to pursue a warrant or voluntarily allow the inspection to happen with really short notice. And that just seems like it got brought up an extra layer, which concerns me. They really made me question the wording of voluntary, fully allowing these inspections to happen. Your other option is to have a warrant, so that's a concern.
The chair this is supposed to be for committee members only, right now. I'm sorry. Any other committee members that have hold on, going back to the agenda. To allow committee members to share news and their concerns for items not on the agenda. Any other committee members?
I have something.
Lauren, the chair recognizes Lauren Whittle.
Thank you. So this month we have 2 training programs for the Ag ID program, fire safety training, May 24th and June 13th. From 8:30 to 3:30 both days. It's here at the TED at the Community Center. So that is the required training you need to take for the Ag ID program. So if we didn't put you on the first go around, two more opportunities. And then I think last time I mentioned the high path avian influenza, that's still obviously a high priority in the news. There's now importing requirements for any dairy cattle coming into the state. They have to be tested and have a certificate that they're free of that high path avian influenza. And I know I have invasive shot holder, but Dr. LaShawn will cover that more than you. If you have anything, I think you have anything out.
The chair recognizes Dr. LaShawn.
We have the invasive shot holder. It's the same insect that's had in Southern California for almost 20 years now. It's not an agriculture problem primarily. It's a open space and ornamental tree problem. It may be worth keeping an eye out if you end up with a lot of dying trees all of a sudden. As we mentioned before, it does not affect eucalyptus. So you can, sorry, no, doesn't affect eucalyptus. You're gonna see it in willows. If you have willows on your property, you'll see it in the box elders. If anybody has box elder, that'd be one to look out for. Sycamores, and then all kinds of ornamental trees. Again, not gonna take up too much time because this is not going to affect agricultural production, but if you see weird tree death, give me a call, because we wanna know where it is. The way it works is they tend to go into a single tree and they multiply there, and at that point, if you remove that tree, you can sort of keep the infestation at a low level. If you don't remove the tree, then it kind of just spins it up for a few years. The tree dies, but in the meantime, your other trees get infested, so it's just worth keeping an eye out. I'm happy to do a more formal long presentation, but again, for those of you in this room, probably not your central concern. It's just you all tend to look at things, so you'll notice it before random civilian things.
Thank you.
And if you see it too, we can go out and survey as well, too, so we're looking at that department. Like the trees in the area to see if we have it in San Mateo County.
Did you say the name of the pest was again?
Invasive shot hole borer.
Shot hole there.
Shot hole, like shot hole, one word.
What's the symptom? Oh, sorry.
I was just asking to send
Oh,
out more
what-
information.
Yeah, I'm happy to send you the entire website. It's the acronym is ISHB, like invasive shot hole borer, and you go to ishb.org. That gives you everything we know about the borers. But they're tiny insects that are about 1 millimeter across. It's a tiny, tiny beetle. It goes into the tree. It's a fungus farmer. No offense to mushroom farmers. It's a fungus farmer, so it brings its own food with it. Unfortunately, the trees and that fungus don't really get along. So the fungus goes dieback of the tree, and the tree eventually conks out, but not before it's produced many, many more beetles. Typically, the tree doesn't conk out in one season. Instead, the beetles just keep multiplying. And are tiny little holes. It's about, if you have a ballpoint pen, that's the right size. So it's exactly the size of a cheap, big ballpoint pen, the tip of the pen, that's how big the holes are.
Wow.
Yeah. You've got some sort of very snazzy pen, I don't know about, but a regular ballpoint pen, the tip of that ballpoint pen, that's how big the holes are. Some trees produce a lot of oozing and sap. Avocados produce whole sugar volcanoes. They're really cool to see. Not so cool if you grow them, but yeah, that's the basics. And but it is a mass attack. So a tree trunk and branches end up with, starting with a few holes and then hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Would it affect Monterey pine type of trees?
No, it prefers broadleaf trees. There's a list of about 60 trees that has been found on Southern California, and about 15, 16 of those are really heavily affected and die. So that's really where we're at. We don't know how it's gonna behave up here, because all of our information comes from Southern California, but from San Jose, which is where they found it, it kind of looks like it did in Southern California. Riparian trees, really box elders, sycamores at this point.
Thank you very much. Any other committee member updates and or questions not on the agenda?
Would it be reasonable to just go back one step? And I mean, I'd like to hear what BJ has to say on the public.
Okay, I have to ask Olivia. Olivia, a committee member wants to know if we could go back to public comment.
Is it possible that we can hold, and again, if there's questions that, but I have to hold it off for next time.
Okay, all right, thank you, Daniel, though. Thank you, Olivia. I defer to Olivia. No other committee member updates and or questions.
I just have one silly item.
The chair recommends never a silly item, the annual payable.
So just a reminder,
No such thing.
if anybody knows anybody who's looking for livestock guardian dogs, we've got some really great livestock guardian dogs.
Livestock guardian dogs.
Anatolian Shepherd, Akbash, amazing, wonderful dogs. I have too many of them now.
Does everyone here have Daniel's contact? Yes, okay, just because I know Olivia, we're not putting forth, or the county's not putting forth people's email addresses in the committee anymore.
Right.
So I urge people to please seek Daniel out for that, in case you try to find him online and you can't. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for offering that. Okay, so planning and building department directors report, planning liaison.
So there
Olivia?
were, for the planned agricultural district permits, there were none that were received, since the last meeting. And in terms of, decisions made by the Board of Supervisors or Planning Commission, no projects were reviewed or decisions issued. There was one coastal development permit that was submitted, and that was, noted on the chart. And other projects, was I put on here, so we had for the Pescadero Fire Station, I do believe we have had discussion on that. I wanted to keep it on here just in terms of, there have been questions regarding the compliance, and the Coastal Commission's involvement. And I did receive confirmation that it's going to be which is what we do for pretty much all of our projects, the compliance in terms of finding the land is, the host will be submitting that, it'll be submitted to staff and then reviewed, and then also because the Coastal Commission is involved and has purview on that, those documents, staff will then, and it's an administrative task force, staff will send it off to the Coastal Commission, and they will review it and respond to planning staff, if there are any comments, concerns, and they are very consistent about providing comment concerns on projects. So that is, I just want to reiterate that because that did come up in how the Coastal Commission was going to be able to review, and if they were to make sure that they are satisfied with the project meeting those conditions of approval. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else to add to that. And if there's, yeah,
How will Coastal Commission know if the property has been farmed?
they are going to, it's gonna be up to the documentation. They're gonna have to rely on whatever information is provided for compliance. You're gonna have to provide that. But again, they're gonna provide the information, and it's gonna have to be under their purview. I do feel like the Coastal Commission is they have their level of planning staff, planners our planning department. And to my understanding, I think, is that they will be able to do their own digging and research. I can re-verify that part, but they review a lot. They're with all the projects that we refer to them. They do their due diligence of compliance with the regulations and do their digging. So I would not expect that it would be any different for this project.
Could this committee request to the Coastal Commission, or ask that before they make their final say, to put us in the loop so we could give our feedback back to them?
I honestly believe that, I know the committee has asked that question. My understanding is that because a decision has been made and it's a condition approval that was approved, et cetera, everything's been done. I do think the window has closed on that. If you wish to, you're more than welcome to contact them.
No, what I was asking was not that. I was asking specifically on our feedback on the piece of property that they plan on putting in the easement, so they could have our feedback on that, just solely that. So that way they're kind of echoing on what James is saying, is if we could send a letter to the coastal commission stating before you make your final decision, could you let us know what piece of property you plan on doing the easement on, so we could give our feedback on that, not the whole project, just the property.
No, that's what I was, that's my response was to that point. It's to the point of, if you have any comments or questions that you would like to, request or submit to the coastal commission, then that, I feel like that goes in line with that overall umbrella type thing, and you can do that. I don't have, county does not have authority over the coastal commission.
Could this?
Could we as a committee
Yeah.
write a letter, is that what you're asking, Peter? 'Cause
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and I think I'm understanding.
Yeah,
what
Ken.
you're
I think that
asking.
would be a good idea, because if a property, I think that we should have a recommendation as to what property, whether they heed to it or not is their choice. But I think we need
Correct.
to be able to write a letter asking for us to have a.
Share before the final say,
Correct, to
so
we
that
can,
way we could evaluate it and
Yes.
give our feedback.
absolutely.
And if
Do-
we could do that through the committee, it'd be great.
Yeah, could we make a motion, to, write a letter and do a second? Would that be okay right now?
As a committee.
As a committee? The AAC, I move that AAC committee, we write a letter, asking the coastal commission to let us know, when the properties are been identified, so that we can give our recommendations as to that property.
I would actually want to check on that first.
Could you get back to us next meeting on that?
Mhm.
Because we
I
know
will
this
find
isn't,
out.
this isn't gonna go fast, so so if you could get
Correct.
back to us.
Yeah,
and
Okay.
To those, what we're asking.
because I think, my understanding is you could do it as individuals from, from past topics and various conversations we've had, and me talking to, and when I followed up with management. I believe you can do it as individuals. I don't know if you can do it as a committee.
Okay,
So I
what
will
would
get
be the
clarification on
reason
that.
for not doing it as a committee that you suspect?
I think my hesitation is because you are a committee working involved with the county. And going back to the fact that the project has been approved, it's been approved, and the condition of approval has been adopted. And I don't know that you can, I don't know that the committee can make a motion to request.
Well, it's just a motion to write a letter request, and this committee didn't recommend the approval. of the
Correct.
Project, so it would be a way for us to voice that concern with it, knowing that it probably doesn't actually have any authority, nevertheless.
Right.
And we're,
But at least we've done our due diligence.
and I'm not challenging their decision. I just want to be in the loop of what their decision is with the property. So if we can get feedback, if we feel it could be a possible error
Correct. And
before the fact, rather than
Right.
after the fact.
No, correct.
because they're in the
I
process
understand.
of finding
Right, and
the
it's,
property.
yeah, and so if you let us know next
Mhm.
meeting, that'd be good.
Okay. Okay, there's, any other, any more for the director's report, from the planning liaison?
I think the last item was the reach code, which we went over earlier.
I guess with reference to the reach code, if you have submitted plans based on the belief that the reach code applied, would you, I guess it would cost money and effort for you to change those plans. If you thought that could create significant savings for a project, would that be something that could happen during the process of getting approval for a project?
Yeah, just repeat that one more time.
Well, we submitted plans based on the assumption that those codes applied and
Correct.
therefore
Yeah.
put in no propane, like for heating,
Mhm.
which could have potentially been a more cost-effective way to provide heating for the units.
Mhm.
So I guess now that they're submitted, it probably doesn't make sense to alter them, but I guess that what, if there's a, between the planning and the building phase, it would be a possibility to alter plans.
Yeah. Yeah, until it's, and even. So generally speaking. Even if you go from the planning stage to the building stage. There can still be opportunity to revise,
Mhm.
yeah. Even if, I'm sorry, just to clarify, even if the planning permit is approved.
Right,
There can be option, not guaranteed, but there can be option to revise. Some elements of the planning approval.
right.
That falls under a standard condition that is. One of the first conditions of approval, which is a minor modification. So it is possible. And then even at the building stage, once that gets going, there's also similar opportunity. It depends on what is being
Right.
revised, but yes.
Okay, is that it for the director's report?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So moving to the regular agenda, applicant owner, we have one item on the agenda. File number PLN 2018-00168, location 12850 Cabrillo Highway, Pescadero, unincorporated. Assessors parcel number 086-142-10. Consideration of a coastal development permit, CDP, Plan Agriculture District permit, architectural review permit, and after the fact grading permit to construct a new 2,750 square foot single-story pre-manufactured affordable housing unit with a 360 square foot detached two-car carport and supporting improvements on a legal 17.4 acre parcel. A total of 1,250 cubic yards of grading is associated with the project, including 630 of cut and 620 of fill and no tree removal. The property is located within the Cabrillo Highway State Scenic Corridor. The CDP is applicable to the California Coastal Commission. The action request is that the AAC provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission on the proposed project. So the owner is here, Debbie Johns, the applicant and the owner. So Debbie, did you want to say something about it? And all the documents here Debbie submitted as well, including information on the soil that you did, which I thought was very well done by the.
Well,
So,
so, but anyway, my name is Debbie Jones. My family has been here since 1930s. Campanati, family, we farmed for many years here. So I own the last parcel of land that they created. So it's actually heritage. So the project itself is for my son Dustin, his wife and their two children, who I hope to keep here in Pescadero because an affordability is just, I mean, not many young kids in a small house here. So, basically, I'm just asking for the recommendation of this committee to help us out going it forward to the planning commission. Or the planning committee.
and I want to note too that, in reading this, if you guys hadn't had a chance to read it through, the soils that, the county says it's on prime soil, but she did a test, and correct me if I got any of this wrong, but she did a test for other housing unit that was on there for affordable housing, hence not taking away any density credits. And when she did that, she, saw that soil was eroded so poorly that it was no longer prime soil. So she went to RCD and she had that done to update what it currently is, which is no prime soil, which then again, also, it looks like where this will be built will be no prime soil as well. And I think that's very significant. And also the fact that this gives us an opportunity as a committee to do what we try to do here, which is preserve, I'm gonna have a tear in my eye, but is to preserve agriculture in our coast by providing homes for family members so that they can stay and help us with our farms, and so that we'll continue to have agriculture here, you know, for generations, which we need to do. And that's my 2 cents. The chair recognizes Peter Markey.
Yeah, I also want to note that the house is going close to the other 2 houses.
Public comment. I'm sorry, Peter, but you should, before the board makes recommendations or makes statements, they should ask for public comment.
Oh,
You had
I'm
the
sorry.
applicant, public comment, and then you can make your recommendation.
Thank you, Mike.
No
Okay.
problem.
So, is there, thank you very much. Is there public comment? Anybody present first? Otherwise, online? No. No. Anybody online public comment?
No. There's no hand raised.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Okay, Chair recognizes Peter Mark.
Yeah, I just want to make note that the house is next to the other 2 houses, so they're clustered, so that way the residential areas is all in the same area, and so that way it leaves the agriculture area that's undisturbed, so it could be done at any time. And it meets all the criteria that that they drilled a well to meet the minimum criteria for the new house, and the existing well that they have already is enough for the first 2 houses. And so it just, it meets all the county's criteria that we look for.
Any other comments from committee members? No? Can we have a vote on the,
I'll make a motion to approve it.
One second.
okay, so motion was made by Peter Markey to approve it, and it was seconded by Daniel Field.
No, but James.
I didn't, oh, James Oku, I'm sorry, James, I was looking at him and thinking of you, sorry. Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
I've been up waiting too long. Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here, Debbie.
Thank you.
So, can we have a motion to approve it, everyone?
Have a motion, you have a second.
I mean, can we vote? Okay, can we have a vote? Everybody say aye? Aye. Nay? Okay, I'm gonna. Is that correct? All right, thanks. All right, next. Presentation on water sources, presenter Julian Fullwaller,
Yes.
Stetson Engineers.
And he is online. Hi, Julian, are you there? Did I lose you? Oh, no.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, thank you. I thought I lost you. Yes.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. Is it okay if I share a short presentation?
Yes, please. I just hope I know how, I think you have permission to do it. I've made you a panelist.
Can he give info about himself and who he is a little bit too? Okay.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me, Olivia. My name is Julian Fullweiler. I'm a supervising engineer with Stetson Engineers, water resources and civil engineering firm located in San Rafael in Marin County. And Stetson Engineers, the company, was appointed water master to the San Gregorio Creek stream system. And so that will be a little bit of the purpose of my brief presentation. I will talk a little bit about San Gregorio in particular and the adjudication and the water master services we provide. And I will also have a few more general slides on California water rights reporting and diversion measurement requirements. And hopefully you will find that information useful. So Stetson was appointed to position of water master for the San Gregorio Creek system in 2006 by the San Mateo County Superior Court. Most of you are probably familiar with San Gregorio Creek stream system. It's in obviously in San Mateo County, coastal part of the county, and encompasses about 52 square miles. It includes the main stem San Gregorio Creek, as well as several large tributaries, Alpine, La Honda Creek, El Corte de Madera, and a host of other small tributaries as well. Prior to Stetson being appointed the water master in 2006, there were 3 prior water masters since the court issued the decree in 1993. I'll talk just a minute or two about the history of the adjudication. There's many adjudicated watersheds throughout California. I believe there's only 2 in San Mateo, San Gregorio being one and Parisima being the other. Both were adjudicated on a similar time frame. It started in 1979 when a handful of farmers and other water users in the stream system petitioned the state board for determination of water rights, and subsequently the state board conducted a series of field investigations. All water users were noticed of the action and advised to file proofs of claim. Throughout this process, the state board conducted numerous field investigations through the early 80s. Ultimately, a preliminary determination of water supply and use was issued in 84, and then a revised order of determination in 1990. You can understand this was a long process, as most adjudications are, with multiple hearings. Ultimately, the San Mateo County Superior Court issued a final decree in 1993. So this is the decree we referred to. It identified, perfected all the water rights within the watershed, including domestic irrigation, stock watering rights. Identified a priority system upon which those rights receive water. The decree identifies approximately 250 points of diversion. Currently, we have about 111 water users in the system. So as a water master, we're responsible for a number of duties. Some of these include monitoring the available water supply on an annual, monthly basis, and ensuring proper distribution of water in accordance with the priorities and allocations established by the decree. We conduct periodic field investigations to measure and monitor the stream flow and diversions. We notify water users of the need to reduce or cease diversions, particularly during dry or drought years. We've kind of set up a procedure where we issue, if the supply drops in the summer, typically just due to a drier rain over the winter, spring months, we'll begin issuing no pump day notices to the lower priority uses. The priority system is essentially the first priority, highest priorities, domestic water users. Second priority is irrigation and stock watering uses. And there are a few small amount of lower priority industrial uses, typically linked to the county public works. So we'll issue, if there's not enough water to go to satisfy all the all the domestic and irrigation uses will issue no pump day notices for 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week, whatever is required. So the shortages are shared. And then we're also just available in general for any water users in the watershed to talk to us about their water rights, reporting to the state board. There is a system of water right transfers within the basin, and anytime there is a transfer, we're responsible for evaluating that, and recommending to the court whether it be approved or not. And we also are on hand to respond to and resolve any water disputes amongst water users. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk more general about just water rights and reporting in the state of California. Many of you are familiar with this, I'm sure. So I'll go through and I can answer any questions at the end. But so California state law, of course, requires that anyone that diverts from lakes, rivers, streams, creeks, under a variety of water rights, including pre-1914 or riparian, are to report their monthly diversion and use amounts to the State Water Resources Control Board. Typically, this takes 2 forms. One is annual reports of licensee or progress reports for anyone that holds post-1914 water rights, and statements of diversion and use for those who divert under riparian or pre-1914 rights. Statements can include any water diverted or pumped groundwater from a known subterranean stream. So this would be basically a subsurface channel, not percolating groundwater. So that's kind of how the state board defines it. There are some exemptions for filing statements of diversion and use. If it's from a spring that does not flow off the property and diversions don't exceed 25 acre-feet a year, you don't have to file. You don't file your statement if your water rights are covered by a permit or license and you're filing under those avenues. Or if your diversion is regulated by a water master and the water master files annual diversions to the state board, you're exempt. One important thing to note is the state board has recently, in the 2020-2021, changed the reporting periods from calendar year to a water year basis. Historically, for a long time, it was January through December, and you filed your reports either in April or June. They've kind of streamlined it, and the reporting periods are now on a water year basis, October through September, and everybody files their reports on the same February 1st deadline of each year. And so for last water year, 2023, the reporting deadline was 2024. Hopefully everyone got their reports in, and we're into the 2024 water year. Reports won't be due until February 1st, 2025. There's been a lot more attention and focus in the last couple of years on measuring your water diversions. In 2016, the state board adopted the emergency regulation for measuring and reporting water diversions, commonly referred to as Senate Bill 88 or SB 88. And these measurement and reporting requirements mostly apply or specifically apply to anyone diverting or holding a water right with a face value in excess of 10 acre-feet per year. They have different categories. Many of you have probably seen this table or something similar to it. This is taken from the state board's website, but it's kind of the breakdown on how frequently you're required to measure your diversion. And so if you're doing a direct diversion out of a creek or river, and you're under 100 acre-feet, but over 10 acre-feet, you're required to have a monitoring device that records the diversion rate on a weekly basis. 100 to 1,000 acre-feet, you have to monitor it daily. If you're over 1,000 acre-feet, you have to monitor hourly, and then the largest farmers out in the valleys, if they're anybody having a diversion over 10,000 acre-feet, also has to put in a telemetry system. I don't believe anybody in San Mateo would fall into that category. And then there's a similar kind of breakout for those who hold storage water rights. And those monitoring requirements vary monthly, weekly, daily, and hourly as well. And so measuring devices that the state board requires are as to be expected. Most common ones on coastal San Mateo would be flow meters and pond staff gauges. There's also velocity meters and other systems that can be set up, but these are measuring devices that directly measure the water diversion. Measurement methods is another term used by the state, and this would be kind of a method that can be implemented if there's not, if you don't have an option to directly measure your diversion. You can establish a measurement method and have this accepted by the state board. This could be something like a single diversion off of a creek or a river that then gets distributed to multiple water right holders. Or pond inflows. We see this sometimes where, for various reasons, inflows into a pond or a reservoir are not easily measured. Maybe there's multiple little entry points. Maybe there's some subsurface flows, and so in that case, typically you'll establish a staff gauge to record the reservoir level. You'll measure outflows, and you can set up a mass balance calculation to kind of back calculate what the inflows to the pond would be, and kind of report and those calculations to the state board. Along with just the frequency of measurement, the state board has kind of requirements on the accuracy. Generally, it's 10 to 15% by volume. You're expected to calibrate your measuring devices every 5 years as well. So I went through that fast, and I think I was just asked to kind of give a sort of a high level overview on a few things. So I am available to the committee if there's any more specific questions. I'm also available as a resource if there's written questions that you kind of want to put forth. I can take a look at those as well. Thank you.
Daniel Theobald had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, for your presentation. Just one question in terms of, you've got access to a lot of water information that could potentially be helpful. I'm wondering specifically about just how rainfall or how water ending up in the watershed compares this year to previous years and that type of thing. Is that information that you can make available? Just as opposed to hearing how many inches of rain we got or something like that. Be interested in knowing, sort of how full the watershed is and, sort of being able to plan for what we could expect in the drier part of the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Specifically to San Gregorio, as part of our water master duties, there's a precipitation gauge in La Honda that we keep track of. The data is available through the state, but we compile that and kind of keep internal records year to year. That information does help us kind of project and predict what might be forthcoming in the summer months. So yeah, we're always happy to share that information. You can just reach out.
Thank you.
Peter Markey has a question.
Yeah, Julian, it's Peter Markey.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, in our committee in the past, when it came for somebody in the San Gregorio watershed was going to build a house and they are drilling a well next to the creek. I asked the question, how, and they had no water rights. How can it be determined that they are, not taking, water from the creek that is, deemed for the people that have water rights? And at that time, the counties told me that it was basically up to somebody that wanted to protest. I, further researched with, Alan Richardson, and he said, that, first he said, funny question. He says, a judge asked the same question, but, he also said that, they had that same conversation years ago and with, environmental health in San Mateo County, and therefore, they basically have, put the people on notice, whoever drills a well next to a creek. I said that without, they may need to have water rights. Has anything been improved since that? Or, since what I just said, or is it still the same?
Yeah, well, I do know we have talked to the county Department of Health, and I believe in the well, it's not the Department of Health, but the department that oversees any well drilling. I guess it is, I think, environmental health, thank you. So on the well application form, it does have that note that you just referenced. Just because you're issued a well permit doesn't necessarily mean you have a water right. The issue is a fairly, can be a fairly complicated one. You know, the state defines the requirement to have a water right for a groundwater well if the water is flowing through a known and definite channel. If it's percolating groundwater, of course, you do not need a water right unless you're in one of the defined high priority groundwater basins in California under the more recent Sigma laws. None of those are in San Mateo. And so defining what is a known and definite subsurface channel is the state has defined some of them. Again, I don't believe any in San Mateo, but generally it's that a subsurface channel has to be present. It has to have relatively impermeable beds and banks. It must have groundwater flowing in the channel. And but conducting that investigation without it having already been determined is generally requires experts coming in and conducting field investigations. And so the state's position is that a well is presumed to be pumping percolating groundwater unless it is proven otherwise. And the burden of that proof does require somebody petitioning the state board, essentially protesting the well.
Julian, thank you. I have one other question. Seeing that the San Gabriel Creek is adjudicated and all the water between April 1st and October 31st is accountable for. I says, what about the people that don't have any water rights, that is harvesting water from the roofs of their houses and like building either putting up a 10,000 gallon tank or building a pond and stockpiling the water, and when they don't have no water rights?
Well, that's a good question, Peter. I don't know that I have a great answer for that one. I don't know how prevalent it is in the watershed, or if the county has any requirements. I don't know what the county's requirements are for installing those types of systems, and you know, presumably they are capturing water during the winter or spring period. So the watershed is fully appropriated through San Gregorio anyway, is fully appropriated for the summer months. It's not fully appropriated for the winter and spring. And we've seen that with the recent issuance of some storage permits in our watershed. But to your question about the requirements for rainwater capture systems, I know it's sort of an evolving issue. I don't have a good answer for you at the moment on that one.
Julian, that's the same thing. This is Olivia. That's the same thing, same as the gray water, correct? I think. Are you familiar with that term?
Gray water is more of the reuse on a property of certain waste applications, waste flows that would traditionally be put into a sewer system. So typically, as long as it's I guess as long as it was connected to a city sewer system, it's a little different. I guess for maybe septic applications, it could be similar. Yes.
I have a question, Julia. This is Natalie Sayre. So, what does that mean? Does that mean that people, that put in a well and use water without having water rights, they're violating and they just get away with it? There's no fine or any kind of, because doesn't that then tell the people who do have water rights, why go the legal course when other people are getting away with doing it illegally?
Well, it's certainly not illegal to drill a well and pump groundwater. The state board's jurisdiction generally extends over surface water diversions, and so I think the issue Peter was kind of raising is sort of a gray area where you might have a shallow well next to a stream system. If anybody can go drill a well, a deep well into an aquifer and pump groundwater. And in San Mateo County, you don't need a water right from the state board to do that. You do need the appropriate county permits, and I believe you have to go through the Department of Water Resources for a drilling permit, but you don't need a water right for that groundwater. And that's historically been true throughout the state of California. It's changed more recently, and the higher priority overextended groundwater basins, largely through the Central and San Joaquin valleys and some other places, Santa Barbara. They are required to now, track that and provide sustainable management plans, and there's a lot more attention on those. And so, no, you do not need in San Mateo, you do not need a water right to pump groundwater, and it's certainly not illegal.
And that's assuming that the well is pumping percolating groundwater. Is that
That's
what you
correct.
said?
Yes,
And
that's
you
correct.
said just because you are issued a well permit doesn't mean you have a water right as well. But, so as long as we're assuming the well, okay. But that's an assumption.
That's an assumption, and mostly it's a valid one. I think there's the gray area becomes when, again, maybe you have a shallower well adjacent to a creek or a river, within a certain proximity, and that's where it can become questionable whether you're truly pumping from a groundwater aquifer or you're pumping essentially surface water, subterranean surface water.
If somebody is doing that, and somebody else sees that they're doing it in a way that they would in fact need a water right, should they be reported to you? And what kinds of things, fines or things happen to the people who are doing this when they're not supposed to, when they don't have the right to do so?
I'm not familiar with any fines being issued, or any specific violations that kind of have been verified. I think if there is something that a neighbor or interested party suspects, they can reach out to me if they're in San Gregorio. Otherwise, reaching out to the state board would be most appropriate.
Thank you. Peter, Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, Julian, I got a question. Okay, so say if someone goes and gets a well permit from the county and drills a well next to a creek, and then they're put on notice that if it's proven at a later date that it is pulling from the creek, so you would need water rights. And say hypothetically, they get the permit to drill the well, they drill the well, they get the permit to build the house, to put the house, and a couple of years later, it's proven, and I know this might be a little bit out of your scope, more for the county. Well, what would happen? Because here's a person now went through the proper legal process and got the permit to drill the well. And he was put on notice that he might need water rights if it's proven to be pulling from the creek. And proved later on it was pulling from the creek, and he already has his house, and he got his permits through San Mateo County and all this here. What, I don't know, this might be more of a question for the county, what would happen? Because now he has his house, he went through the legal process, he got his permits and everything else, and he's faced with a problem that he needs water rights to obtain this water now. What happens?
Julian, do you have information to chime in for that before I do?
I don't. That's a very hypothetical scenario. Although, certainly plausible. I could not say what could or could not happen in that situation.
So as far as I know, so if I understood the situation correctly, they were approved, they have a well?
So they drilled a well, they got the permits by the county.
Okay,
And they were on notice through the county that by drilling next to the creek, he says there's a possibility that if it's proven at a later date that you're pulling water from the creek,
correct.
you would need water rights. So, okay, it's not proven, nobody
Okay.
protested, but they went ahead and built their house and all, and then it was find out that, oh my gosh, but only that it's pulling from the creek. You can
Mhm.
tell now because it's a drought, and you can tell the water's not going downstream, it's pulling right toward this well.
Mhm.
When people tested it, and it was not, it did not hit a main. Says that feeds the creek. In fact, it is actually
Pulling from there.
hit right into the aquifer, the substream of the creek. Therefore, you need water rights. What
Correct.
happens? They don't have water rights.
So generally speaking, I think they would have to be required to pursue another domestic well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah, just one comment from my experience. My guess is that they would require that well to be sealed
Yeah.
because they do not want groundwater contaminating
Correct.
aquifers.
Yeah.
Or they could also purchase water rights from somebody else. And that's been done in the past. too.
Yeah, in which case they would pull straight from the stream. But yeah, I think there's a lot of sensitivity to groundwater
Yeah.
contaminated.
I was just
subsurface
curious because
wells.
this never happened before, and when it came through our committee, I raised the question when somebody was applying for the drill well next to a creek. What provisions is the county gonna put forward to test if it's gonna be groundwater or creek water? And then they explained what you guys explained, so
Correct.
and so
It is interesting what Julian chimed in about that, right? That what the assumption is until it's proven otherwise.
and
The chair recognizes John Bars.
Yeah, just Julian, thanks for your presentation. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for folks that can calibrate flow meters, or would you recommend just reaching out to the company you purchased the flow meter from?
Yeah, usually if you can get it through the manufacturer, that's the best. They will usually calibrate the flow meters, clearly within the state's requirements, which I think for a flow meter is 5% accuracy, but when you purchase a micrometer meter or something like that, a Badger meter, it's usually going to be much closer to 1%. And so yeah, you can, you can take the meter off, ship it to the manufacturer and have them factory calibrated, and that's probably going to be your best. I know there are a lot of firms that will come out to the farms, and they can, they can't really calibrate it in the field, but they can verify the meter. If they'll put a strap-on meter and kind of check it against what your installed meter's reading, and can tell you that, it's running properly. The problem is if it's not, then you basically still have to pull it off and send it to the manufacturer anyway.
Peter or Marky?
Yeah, Julian, this is Peter Markey, I have another question. Is, the reservoirs that we have for stockpiling water in the adjudication of San Gregorio, and as you know, it's based upon the ones that build theirs earlier have a higher priority to get theirs full. And when there's abundance of water in the winter, it doesn't matter, everybody's filling up at the same time. But when you have a drought situation, and you have a priority of the ones that were built first, there's first to make sure they're full, and then the other ones that were built over the fall. But when you have somebody that's harvesting water during the winter in a situation like that there without a permit, and they'd be able to say put up their own tanks, or they build their own small reservoir, and it says, and they're taking it without having a permit or anything, and it's taken away from the ones that do have a permit and all this here. Well, what happens there?
Well, if it's, anything greater than 10 acre feet, clearly you're going to need a water right for that, through the state board. For smaller stock ponds, you can pursue a small, water use registration through the state. Again, for small tanks and rainwater catchment systems, that are going to be on the order of hundreds of gallons. Certainly if, a lot of people did that in a heavier density, that could have an impact. But in a rural community, a small rainwater harvesting is probably going to be relatively insignificant. I don't know what the most recent kind of regulations of those systems are through the county. It's something I can look into a little bit more.
Yeah, Julian, if you could, because if is there a minimum amount that is allowed, I like to know. If there's none that's allowed, I like to know. I'm just really curious what it is. Like, say, if somebody harvests during the winter, rainfall, and they're filling up, say, maybe tanks, and each tank's 5,000 gallons, and they fill up 10 tanks, 20 tanks, or something like that. Or if it's less than 10 acre foot, it's allowable, it's not allowable. I just like to know.
Yeah,
If you-
I think it's gonna, yeah, most of those rainwater catchments are, smaller systems that people are installing on their roofs, and maybe a barn, which just has a limited ability to divert and store a significant amount of water. If you're filling 10,000 gallon tanks, I guess that's a little different, but a lot of those systems that I've seen are fairly minimal.
No, but I've seen some systems, like you said, up barns, that fills a small tank, then it pumps into other tanks, and that can accumulate through the winter years. I says, actually a few acre foot.
Mm.
But anyways, I just would like to know what's the minimum amount that's allowable, if it is, or if it's not, that's all. For winter, I know the summer diversions is none because it's all accountable for.
Right.
I'm starting in May.
So a follow-up, did Do you want to say something?
We have one.
Dante, okay, I just wanted to follow up on Peter's thing before I go to Dante so thank you, Julian. Just wanted to follow up, Peter, if he knows where to get a hold of you to give you that information, or do you want him to come back to the committee if he's able?
He could call me.
Okay, okay,
And
thank
then-
you.
And then
Dante?
it's actually Carrie Burke.
Okay, Carrie Burke. the
Carrie,
chair
I'm gonna-
recognizes For a question.
Carrie, you can speak, if you can hear us.
I think you put it on.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Julian. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. And I have just a couple of items. Does your firm do any forecasting so you can be ahead of the curve, especially in the San Gregorio watershed, so that you kind of know and can anticipate issues we might have? And then also kind of exactly what Natalie was talking about. Can you also explain some of the services that your firm offers, because we have a lot of rural people and farmers and ranchers in the audience that might not know all the things that your firm provides. Thank you very much.
Hi, Carrie. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, to forecasting in San Gregorio, yeah, we certainly do. You know, we're a little bit limited by the information that's available in terms of gauging. There's one USGS stream gauge on the main stem San Gregorio, pretty well located down by Stage Road, relatively close to the mouth, and so it's a good indicator of the total stream flow that the system's producing at any given time. That's a publicly available gauge that anybody can go and look up records, and so we monitor that. And then I mentioned the La Honda precip gauge. We track that. And then we sort of we've been doing this long enough where we kind of have a pretty good understanding hydraulically of kind of what's coming. Around this time, a little earlier, we start to kind of look at the information and the flows and the rainfall, and March or April, we sort of have a sense of what might be coming through the summer months. And then in regards to your other question about services, yeah, we provide the Water Master services in San Gregorio through the court. But in addition to that, we're a full service civil and water resources engineering company, and we have a lot of private clients, agricultural clients up and down coastal San Mateo and in Marin and in Northern California, and we advise and consult on all matters related to water rights, reporting to the state board, measurement systems, setting up diversion systems, and a lot of associated kind of consulting work.
Thank you, Julian. Ryan Casey has a question for you.
Hi, Julian. I on a few occasions, I've been following the creek flows. And I'll notice like one day it'll be at a certain level. And next day I'll look and it'll have like dropped or gone up. I just, every once in a while, it seems like there's like these erratic and sometimes substantial changes. Is that just like a malfunction of the equipment? And how often does that kind of thing happen, or that you're aware of? How often are they checked on and stuff like that?
You're talking about the creek water levels?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Certainly, I could be available for some more detailed conversations when that happens. If you ever wanted to reach out, I'd be interested. Over the years, we've kind of worked with individuals, some of the larger ag users, and of course some have moved on, but there's not a lot of really big pumps on the system anymore that kind of would be able to do that. Certainly,
That's why I think it's an equipment thing.
yeah.
As opposed to a pumping thing.
I will say that we do observe kind of diurnal fluctuations, which are common on a lot of stream systems, especially as you get into the later summer and fall months, as just kind of the riparian needs change. And so you can see pretty large fluctuations, fairly significant between night and day. Just temperature dependent and what the riparian vegetation is doing. When we get stream flows kind of under maybe 2 CFS, it can really fluctuate. That's just a natural diurnal fluctuation. So that could be part of it.
Yeah, a lot of these, when I notice them, it's like I'll check every day, it'll be pretty steady at one, at a flow, and then it would be like a big drop. And then when you look back at the history, it won't show that drop. If that makes any sense. It's kind of like the historical records change with it. And yeah, if I notice it, I'll definitely reach out.
Are you referring to the USGS gauge records?
Yeah.
And it is also worth mentioning they take measurements and will make rating adjustments on that gauge. They come out through USGS. I think their Santa Cruz office, and they come out fairly regularly, maybe once a month in the summer. And if they take a flow measurement, and the bed has changed significantly, they'll adjust all the flows up or down. And that channel is dynamic. I don't know if you've been down kind of to the gauge site recently, but it's scoured out a lot this year, compared to previous years when there was a lot more sediment buildout. I think maybe some of the high flows washed out some log jams downstream. So that happens as well.
Yeah, that sounds maybe more like what has happened. But okay, thank you.
I have a question for the county, actually, but it relating to this. Julian, chime in if you're okay with doing so, and I appreciate your help. Is regarding these well permits, if somebody building a well is close enough that they could be pulling from the creek, shouldn't the county require that the applicant prove that they're not doing so? If in fact the county's not doing that?
Julian, do you have any input before I answer?
I mean, yeah, there are setbacks, but just if in fact it's shown that they're close to those setbacks or within an area that there's a possibility for whatever reason, when that onus be on the county, that's my question. Thank you.
I think I've kind of shared all the information I have on that. I think this sounds like more of a county specific question.
Yeah,
I think this
asking.
is Olivia. I know that it's correct that one of the committee members just mentioned that there are setbacks that they follow for to structures, other wells, which are gonna be, I think, from what I've looked up when I've looked at projects, the other wells being on other properties. And then to the creek as well. So I think that they look at those are the parameters, or at least some of the parameters they look at.
Right, I'm aware of the setbacks. I'm just concerned that there's been cases in the past where there was suspect that there was water being pulled from the creek when the applicant submitted an application for a permit. And I'm just wondering, that onus, I would assume, would be on the county before they give the permit. So I was wondering, does the county then do anything to investigate that when it occurs?
I can send an email to the liaison from environmental health and ask them, ask them how that's approached.
Okay, thank you. Peter Markey has a question.
Yeah, I got one other question. Is just for me, in my opinion only, is if a person has water rights, I really don't care. In Sangor Creek where it's adjudicated, I really don't care if they drill a well right next to the creek. And if it's proven that it's pulling out of the creek and it's, actually, they have a meter that monitors how much it takes and it doesn't take more than its, water rights, there's no problem. And this is the problem that I have as a person that has none. And even with a 50-foot setback, it's just sometimes right next to a creek. It's as you find out at a later date that they're pulling water from the creek rather than a water main. So, and just being put on notice. I kind of think that there should be some provisions in prehab before a person builds a house to make sure if they don't have water rights, that they're not pulling it from the creek. So that's just my opinion.
I just want to do a check for, Dante. I thought he had his. Dante, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, up and down a few times. I know this is taking a lot of time here, so I'll be quick. I think just for clarity here, but really, if somebody applies to drill a well in that San Gregorio area and goes through the process and gets a permit and meets all the setbacks, improves quantity and quality and depth, sanitary seal, etc., moves forward, builds a house, maybe even sells the property. And what I'm hearing sounds a little scary that then there's some drought year, and if someone challenges your water, and if it's proven that there's interference that you're drawing from the creek, that you might have to abandon your well, that, I mean, that, and then trying to prove that, but is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Scary. Thank you.
The best answer that I can give you for that is I can check with environmental health because this is all completely under their purview.
Peter Markey?
Yeah, there's been a case when I was on this committee that this, I think, because I raised this question up before, because it was a small parcel next to the creek. And that's when the county that told me, and I forget who our representative was on the Ag Advisory Committee at the time, that it's up to anybody else if they want to challenge it. And I hear what Doctor says, yeah, but if it's way after the fact and they challenge it and it's proven and somebody else bought the property or they built their house, or there's no format for prior, I agree with Dante, it's pretty scary.
I think this is Natalie Sayre. I think there should be more due diligence when the well is being built on the onus of the county to make sure that the water's not being drawn from the creek, or that it will be drawn from the creek, at least to the best of their ability at the time. I have a question is, excuse my ignorance on here, but the water rights for San Gregorio Creek, do people pay for those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they pay money for those. So I think it's absolutely a reasonable point of contention to be able to say, hey, if somebody's going to put in a well and they're possibly pulling water from the creek and somebody's paying for it that has been doing so for years, that person that is now building and might be pulling water as well needs to pay as well. It's just fair across the board. And that's what we're trying to do. So I believe that people who already have water rights and have paid for them, that I think it's fair to say, hey, if somebody else is getting that same water, they need to pay too, right? It's only the way the world works. James, had the question, James.
So, I mean, that is what the setbacks are there for. I'm curious how many cases then there are that have been proven that a well within or outside of that 50-foot setback has affected the creek and is pulling from it.
That's a
And
good
I mean,
question.
I don't want to suggest to the county that we have all these additional regulations to protect against a problem that might not really be that big of a problem.
That's true. Absolutely,
So-
absolutely.
I would want to see more information about that to consider.
Absolutely. Well, I think when a well is being considered, if there's anything that comes forth that it could possibly be pulling from the creek, that might be out of the scheme of the setbacks, then maybe that's something that it needs to be looked at prior to the well permit. Am I right? Or Peter?
Peter Markey, when it came up in our committee here a few years ago in the watershed of San Diego, I suggested after they drill the well, they have the chemistry checked of the well, of the water versus the chemistry of the creek. And if it's the difference, then it stands to reason pretty clear that they're pulling from a vein versus the creek. But if it's the same, I said that it's just shows pretty obvious that it's pulling from the creek. But at the time, that's when the county said that they put on notice, and that's what they're going with. So, and once again, I do want to add though, in Sandal Creek, that if you do have water rights, I feel the setback shouldn't even exist. It should be even next to the creek line because you're pulling within your legal water rights. That's my opinion.
That's a good point. So Julian, the chemical analysis would in fact show that, obviously.
Yeah, that determination would typically be made by a hydrogeologist and could include a lot of factors, certainly proximity to the creek, looking at where the perforated interval on the well is. They would look at geology in the region and you know, how thick the alluvial layer is, where a bedrock layer might be. And then, yes, a chemical analysis could also be conducted. And so all these different factors would play into any particular or specific determination.
Thank you. Did anyone else have questions for, or comments for Julian or the county? Okay. All right, Julian, thank you so very much for taking your time to give us an excellent presentation and answer our questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great
Thank you,
questions. All right.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Do we have to move up for that? Just adjourning it. Thank you.